Welcome back to Superbly Said Advanced English Vocabulary and Phrases.
And really quickly, you can go to SpeakDuo.com to meet new people from around the world who are practicing English on video calls to become more confident with their English speaking abilities.
Today we are analyzing a SpeakDuo lesson plan designed to teach advanced English idioms using comedic bloopers from the television show The Office.
Right, and jumping straight in, the thematic connection between the pop culture source material and the practice exercises is underutilized and feels disjointed.
Yeah, looking at the setup, it feels like a bit of a bait and switch.
Exactly. The weakness here is that the lesson effectively uses entertaining quotes from the Prison Mike character to introduce phrases like a rap sheet and to scare someone straight, but then the practice questions immediately pivot to generic, everyday personal experiences.
Like asking about unhealthy eating or embarrassing moments.
Right, and that abrupt shift discards the specific, comedic, workplace-focused energy that initially hooked the learner. It makes the exercises feel completely disconnected from the lesson's premise.
Since this material is aimed at intermediate to advanced English learners, is there a risk that forcing them into a comedy role play might make them too self-conscious about being funny, thereby distracting them from actually practicing the vocabulary?
I get that concern, but structured, slightly absurd role play actually lowers affective filters. So my suggestion is to maintain the workplace comedy theme throughout the practice sections to create a more cohesive, engaging, and contextually rich role play experience.
Okay, so give me some concrete examples of how they could actually do that.
Well, instead of asking about a generic scary experience for scare someone straight, task the learners with role-playing a manager trying to scare straight an employee who habitually steals lunches from the break room.
Oh, that's hilarious. And we should probably break down to scare someone straight for our advanced learners real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So, to scare someone straight means to use a frightening experience to make a person change bad behavior before facing awful consequences.
Right. And compare that to something like to teach someone a lesson.
Well, teaching someone a lesson usually happens after the fact, right? It's a punishment. But scaring someone straight is preventative. You're showing them the extreme consequences so they don't do it again.
Yeah, so if you're answering an IELTS Speaking Part 2 question about a time you helped someone, you could say, I took my brother to visit the local jail to scare him straight after he got caught shoplifting.
Spot on. And for the phrase, a rap sheet, instead of a generic prompt, have them create a humorous corporate rap sheet detailing a colleague's minor office offenses.
Like constantly replying all to company-wide emails?
Yes, exactly. And just to clarify the phrase, a rap sheet is literally a person's official criminal record listing all the various offenses they have been legally charged with.
Which is pretty different from a track record, right? Because a track record can be positive or negative, like your history of performance at work.
Right, but a rap sheet is strictly negative. It's a list of offenses. So in a work context, you might joke with your boss, well, looking at John's rap sheet of missing deadlines, we probably shouldn't put him in charge of this project.
Totally. All right, let's look at the second major point, which is the pacing of the lesson. The source material explicitly states this is a 1-hour session featuring 4 one-on-one auto-matching breakouts.
And here's the issue. The repetitive sequence of presenting a vocabulary expression followed immediately by a breakout room discussion creates a rigid and potentially fatiguing pace.
So it's just too stop and start.
Exactly. The weakness is that the document rigidly alternates between introducing just 1 or 2 expressions and then immediately pausing for a breakout room.
Like breakout room 1 occurs right after expression 2, and breakout room 2 happens right after expression 4.
Right. And this constant stop and start pacing prevents conversational momentum. It fragments the overall learning experience for advanced students.
But if we consolidate the breakouts into fewer, longer sessions, do we undermine the platform's core technical feature of high-frequency partner matching?
Not at all. The suggestion here is to simply group the vocabulary into larger, logically connected thematic clusters, and then consolidate the breakout sessions to allow for deeper, more complex conversational application.
So how would you group them? Give us some concrete examples.
Well, you could group phrases like a temporary setback, to siphon off, and soft and cushy into a single corporate realities learning module.
Let's unpack those idioms. So A temporary setback is a brief problem that slows progress but does not cause any permanent or lasting harm to the plan.
Yeah, and that's very different from a total failure. A setback means you're still on the path, you just tripped. Like telling a colleague, losing that client was just a temporary setback. We'll bounce back next quarter.
Right. And what about to siphon off?
That means to gradually divert resources, energy, or customers away from something, weakening it over time.
So it's more subtle than just stealing.
Exactly. Stealing is usually direct and sudden, but siphoning off is a slow, often sneaky drain. Like an IELTS prompt about a business challenge. You might say, "We realized a competitor was starting to siphon off our main customer base."
That makes perfect sense. And then soft and cushy describes a situation that is extremely comfortable, very easy, and completely free from any hardship.
Right. And it's a bit different from just saying something is easy. Easy just means not difficult, but cushy implies a level of luxury or an unfair advantage.
Like the CEO's nephew got a really soft and cushy job in the marketing department.
Perfect example. So you cluster those together. Then you group to forge something, a rap sheet, and to scare someone straight into a rule-breaking module.
And we haven't defined to forge something yet.
Right. So to forge something means to fraudulently alter a signature, document, or piece of data in order to successfully deceive people.
Yeah, which is more specific than just faking something. Like you can fake an illness, but you forge a physical document.
Exactly. Like telling your boss, "I think this vendor tried to forge the safety certificates." So following a cluster like that, you initiate one extended breakout session where learners are challenged to use at least 3 of the newly learned expressions in a single connected narrative.
I love that. Hand them a pile of bricks and let them build a wall, rather than just handing them one brick at a time.
Spot on. It makes the conversation so much more dynamic.
Okay, so let's move on to the final section we want to discuss today, which is the AI feedback. I was looking at the exact AI feedback notes from the 0046 and 0048 timestamps in the document.
And there is a clear issue there. The personalized AI feedback segment lacks contextual integration with the core advanced vocabulary being taught in the lesson.
Yeah, it feels like boilerplate marketing material.
That's the weakness. The opening and closing slides highlight the app's AI feedback capabilities by showing generic corrections like fixing the pronunciation of the word yeah or reorganizing the simple sentence, "Where do you envision yourself?"
Right, and while that's useful, these examples feel completely detached from the advanced, highly specific idioms that make up the actual meat of this specific lesson.
Exactly.
But I have to ask, can a standardized lesson plan reasonably dictate the specific UI mockups shown to the user? Or is this more about setting the right expectations for the user before they enter the session?
It is absolutely about expectation setting. If I sign up for an advanced C1 class and the AI tells me how to pronounce yeah, I'm going to assume the app is too basic for me.
So what's the suggestion here?
Tailor the AI feedback examples to directly address common advanced pitfalls associated with the specific expressions featured in this module.
Give us some concrete examples of what those mockups should look like.
Show a mock AI correction of a student misusing a preposition, such as saying siphon out instead of the correct phrasal verb siphon off.
Or maybe demonstrate how the AI might correct the contextual usage of no harm, no foul.
Yes. If a student incorrectly applies it to a serious situation rather than a minor mistake, the AI should flag that.
And let's define no harm, no foul for the listeners. It's a phrase meaning that since no real damage was caused, there is absolutely no reason to be very upset.
Right, and contrast that with forgive and forget. Forgive and forget implies real harm was done, but you are choosing to let it go. No harm, no foul literally means nothing bad actually happened.
Right, like you accidentally sent the draft to my personal email instead of work, but no harm, no foul.
Exactly. And another phrase in the lesson is to jump to conclusions. The AI could correct a student who uses that wrong too.
And to jump to conclusions means to make a very hasty judgment based on little information, without waiting for the true facts to emerge.
Which is very different from making an educated guess. An educated guess uses facts and logic, but jumping to conclusions ignores the lack of them.
Like an IELTS Part 2 answer. I knew I shouldn't jump to conclusions about why the project failed before I saw the actual data.
Perfect. And showing the AI correcting those specific advanced nuances proves to the user that the technology is sophisticated enough to handle the lesson.
All right, before we wrap up the critique, let's run a quick quiz to test our listeners on all these idioms we've been unpacking.
Sounds good. We'll give you a question and 3 options. Option A, Option B, and Option C.
And listeners, feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer before we reveal it. We'll give you the answer right after the options.
Ready? Here's the first one. What is the best definition for the expression, a temporary setback? Option A, a brief problem that slows progress but does not cause any permanent or lasting harm to the plan. Option B, a sudden failure that completely destroys an ongoing project and requires starting over from scratch. Or Option C, a deliberate delay tactic used by management to avoid making a final decision on a risky investment. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer. And the answer is Option A. A temporary setback is a brief problem that slows progress but doesn't cause any permanent harm.
Great. Question 2. How is the phrasal verb to siphon off accurately defined? Option A, to forcefully remove a toxic employee from a productive corporate environment before they cause harm. Option B, to gradually divert resources, energy, or customers away from something, weakening it over some time. Or Option C, to rapidly inject a massive amount of capital into a failing business in order to save it from ruin.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The correct answer is Option B. To siphon off means to gradually divert resources away from something.
Moving on to question 3, if someone decides to forge something, what exactly are they doing? Option A, to violently smash a highly valuable physical object in order to completely destroy crucial evidence. Option B, to carefully construct a completely unbreakable professional agreement between 2 competing factions. Or Option C, to fraudulently alter a signature, document, or piece of data in order to successfully deceive people.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
And the answer is Option C. To forge something is to fraudulently alter a document or signature.
Question 4. What does a person mean when they use the phrase, no harm, no foul? Option A, a phrase meaning that since no real damage was caused, there's absolutely no reason to be very upset. Option B, a strict rule stating that any mistake, regardless of intent, must be severely punished without delay. Or Option C, a legal defense used to completely excuse a massive corporate fraud if the perpetrators apologize soon.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is Option A. No harm, no foul means since no real damage was caused, there's no reason to be upset.
Next up, question 5. Which of the following best describes what it means to scare someone straight? Option A, to constantly threaten a junior employee with immediate termination if they ever make a minor mistake. Option B, to use a frightening experience to make a person change bad behavior before facing awful consequences. Or Option C, to permanently traumatize an individual by exposing them to a remarkably dangerous workplace incident.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is Option B. To scare someone straight is to use a frightening experience to make a person change bad behavior.
Question 6. In a legal or behavioral context, what is a rap sheet? Option A, a highly detailed financial document predicting overall market trends for the upcoming business quarter. Option B, a strictly secret corporate document containing totally unverified rumors about senior management teams. Or Option C, a person's official criminal record listing all the various offenses they have been legally charged with.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The correct answer is Option C. A rap sheet is an official record listing various offenses.
Second to last, question 7. What does it mean if a lifestyle or situation is described as soft and cushy? Option A, describing a situation that is extremely comfortable,
very easy and completely free from any hardship. Option B, describing an exceptionally weak argument that totally fails to convince an audience during a meeting. Or option C, describing a physical product that is remarkably fragile and will break easily under minimal pressure.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
And the answer is option A. A soft and cushy situation is extremely comfortable and free from hardship.
All right, final question, number 8. How is the idiom to jump to conclusions used in the provided lesson? Option A. To carefully analyze a massive amount of incredibly complex data before making a major corporate choice. Option B. To make a very hasty judgment based on little information, without waiting for the true facts to emerge. Or option C. To permanently refuse to accept a surprisingly obvious truth despite being presented with solid evidence.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
And the final answer is option B. To jump to conclusions is to make a hasty judgment based on little information.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you guys did well on that quiz.
Yeah, it's a great way to really lock in those definitions. So let's wrap up today's critique with a sharp, brief recap. We covered 3 core areas for improvement today. First, elevating the practice questions to match the pop culture theme.
Right. And second, restructuring the breakout rooms for better conversational momentum.
And finally, contextualizing the AI feedback examples to reflect the advanced vocabulary.
The actionable suggestions here are pretty straightforward. You just need to rewrite the conversational prompts as workplace role plays, cluster the idioms before initiating breakout sessions, and update the AI mock-ups with phrase-specific corrections.
Exactly. We invite the listener to implement these changes and submit their revised lesson plan or any new materials back to the show for further feedback. We always love seeing how these documents evolve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Until next time, keep refining your work. See you later.